This clip is brought to you by VegasWinners.com. Get expert sports betting advice from some of the best handicappers in the world. Head on over to VegasWinners.com and win yourself some money.
And Tony, I'm pretty excited about today's show because it's the glory days of 1986.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we can't really do that without adding the context that this is going to be the last program that airs prior to Magnum's crash. So this airs, as we know, on October 12th.
Right.
No, I'm sorry, October 18th is when it airs, but it was recorded on October 12th.
That's right.
The accident happened on the 14th. Mm-hmm. So by the time fans saw this, the accident was 4 days prior, but the show was taped 2 days prior. Of course, we've got a full show here. It was recorded on October 12th. That same day, Ric Flair was in Central States in St. Louis working with Dick Murdoch. The next day, he would be on the road again, of course. But Magnum's last match was the next day, October 13th, Greenville, South Carolina. It's unbelievable that it worked out this way, but I believe it was the main event against Jimmy Garvin in a lumberjack match. So there's your trivia note, folks. Who was Magnum's last match? Where? When? What were the circumstances? October 13th, 1986, Greenville, South Carolina, Jimmy Garvin in a lumberjack match in the main event. It's wild to think, man, that we've enjoyed so much great Magnum stuff here in just 9.5 months as we've been revisiting 1986, but whew,
yeah.
Bad deal.
Bad deal is right. It brings it all back in perspective about life. And I remember the night very well. I can't remember who called me, but I got a phone call at home and told me that Magnum had a very bad crash. And it was like, he's done. I said, what do you mean he's done? Well, he's not dead, but he won't be able to wrestle again. I said, it just happened. And they said, yeah, but it's pretty apparent. Because what happened was apparently the Porsche skidded off the road, clipped a phone or a telephone pole. And when the telephone pole came down, it came down on his head and on his neck.
And by the way, as the story goes, if it's a little bit this way or a little bit that way, that would have been the end of Magnum TA's life.
Right.
He suffered a broken neck. He's going to be paralyzed from the chest down. He's initially put on life support. Mm-hmm. He was returning to his home in Matthews, North Carolina, which is a suburb of Charlotte.
Right.
He had left a bar in Charlotte, but he had not been drinking. Mm-hmm. And the roads are wet because it had been raining. And allegedly he was driving above the speed limit, but as the story goes, not crazy.
Right.
But enough that light sports car
mm-hmm.
with that wet road, it was a deadly combination that thankfully didn't wind up being deadly for him because it could have been a lot worse.
Right.
But the next day, this is unbelievable, but this is what it is. You guys had promoted a live event, so you had to do it. It was a TV taping, October 14th, and the show would open with Bob Caudle and Johnny Weaver talking about the car wreck that Magnum had suffered earlier in the week. I can't imagine what everyone must have been thinking, because thank goodness for optimists in the world, but the eternal optimists in this era probably thought, as you said, well, he'll be okay. I mean, it just happened. We don't know. And we know that it would never quite be back, but from a business standpoint, which feels even gross to kind of talk about because we're talking about a dude's life. You guys had real plans for Magnum to be in the main event, Starrcade, challenging Ric Flair for the world title, with the idea being that was going to be Magnum's moment.
Right.
To best the Horseman, win the world title, beat the Nature Boy, and it didn't happen. This must have been stressful business-wise.
Oh, it absolutely was, because, well, let's think about on a booking level, what do you do with, how do you replace your number one babyface? And we are at the end of the territories right now, so you don't necessarily look around and find somebody. You don't call Bill Watts and say, "Can you help us out here?" Or, the old gentleman's agreement with promoters. So Dusty did only what he could do, and he took. They always say, the old adage in the business is, take your top heel when he's the hottest. That's when you turn him babyface,
Right.
and that's what they did with Nikita. So, from a business standpoint, it was very difficult. We painted a very, very glossy picture on it. I don't know what I can't remember what Johnny and Bob Cottle had to say, but not on this episode, but on the episode that airs finally after the accident. David and I were very optimistic, and we didn't go into it. Very unlike what we would do today. Today we would talk about it. We would talk about what's going on with his family and everything, but we just kind of glossed over it. It was a product of us kayfabing. I think it was a product of just not talking about it. Unfortunately, when you're not going to be on TV anymore, you move on. Back then I remember hearing Jeremy say this years prior to this wreck. He said, if a guy leaves us and goes somewhere else and he's no longer on our TV, it's like he never existed. And that was the way you did it. Now, with Magnum, he was not going to be on our TV anymore, but you couldn't deny that he didn't exist because he was a big part of our company.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe this is real, but we not only got a handicapper, but we got the best ever. How are you so good at handicapping these games? I mean, 4-0, that's quite a streak already.
Well, let's talk about every pick I've given this year in the NFL as an example. 23-8. Every pick I've given this year. 4 weeks in the bag, 23-8. There's nobody in the country that can match what I do, but I always make sure, because anybody, Conrad, could make up anything. They could tell you and blow smoke and tell you, oh, I'm the greatest. But I am independently monitored and documented, so nobody could ever question what I say and go, I don't believe it. I send every pick to an independent monitoring and documentation service that has to get the pick before the game goes off and then publishes it after the game goes off so anybody can see what I gave. But this is the best start I've ever had. I've never been this good to start a season. You don't win every week, 4 weeks in a row, everything you put out. It's been the kind of year I've had. So get on a hot streak, because when a guy's on a hot streak like me, you want to ride it. I've always had a talent for picking winners. Never quite as hot as I am right now, but I've always been very good at it. And I think it's because I do more homework than anybody else. The average guy or gal watching this podcast, they don't have time. They have a career. They have jobs. They might read the newspaper or go online and see something, but they don't have time 80 hours a week to study the games. That's what I do. And I have a crew of guys behind me, my consultants, who every week we get together 3 times a week and they throw their ideas at me. I throw my ideas at them. And then I pick the final 5 plays on Saturday and Sunday in college and pro football. So, I've got a great team behind me too, but we're all doing together hundreds of hours of homework. So you don't have to. It's all at vegaswinners.com.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to vegaswinners.com right now. Let's win some money.
And his wreck was the biggest local story in Atlanta. In Charlotte. It was front page news in the Charlotte Observer. It was the lead story on all the TV shows, and not only sports, in news. And that's because a lot of fans went to, I believe he was at Charlotte Memorial there, and camped out and was worried about him and checked on him. And the hospital, their public relations staff, was overrun by fans worrying about Magnum TA. It was an incredible time. And you're right, business has to go on. Any business will say that. So it was really a tough time.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com.